everybody. Welcome to PJ Chapter Book Time. We have been enjoying over the last few nights another one of Beverly Cleary's books. This one's called Henry Huggins. Here's Henry and his dog Ribsy, and they have had all kinds of fun adventures. Last time when we read last night's chapter was all about the night crawlers, and I don't know if you remember, but Henry lost his pal's football, so he had to figure out a way to earn enough money to replace the football. So he discovered that he could get a penny apiece for night crawlers. His neighbor was willing to pay him for them. So Henry had to go out, and it was, I think, 1,380 night crawlers that he had to pick out. So he managed, mission accomplished. His mom and dad at the end came and gave him a hand with that. So he was indeed able to, after much time and effort on his part, he was able to raise the money to buy the new football for I believe it's his friend, a Scooter. And the way the football was lost was Henry went to throw it, and it ended up sailing into an open window in the back of a car that was going by. What are the chances of that? That's an incredible timing. So then the man who was the recipient of the football discovered it in his back seat, and evidently must have known general vicinity of where the ball had sailed into his car. So the next morning, after all the nightcrawler picking, he came to Henry's house and gave him back the football. So now, not only was Henry able to give Scooter back his football, but he had now earned enough money to buy a football for himself, which is what he really wanted. So, all's well that ends well. We're moving on to chapter 4 today, and it's called The Green Christmas. Let's see. Henry was glad he sat in the row by the windows in room 4 because he could watch for snowflakes. Even though his father said they would probably have a green Christmas this year, Henry still hoped for snow. He was pretty sure the package hidden behind some boxes in the garage was the sled that he wanted, a real flexible flyer. How was it he knew that was there? Anyway, while he sat at his desk looking out at the clouds for signs of snow, he was listening to Miss Roop talk about the Christmas operetta and thinking he had taken part in enough school plays for one semester. In September, he had been second Indian in a play for the Westward Expansion Unit. That hadn't been too bad. He stuck an old feather out of a duster in his hair and wore an old auto robe his mother let him take to school. It was an easy part because all he had to say was, "Ugh." Okay, so back when Beverly Cleary wrote this book, I just have to put a little disclaimer in here. They weren't necessarily aware, and not being aware, were not always very respectful of other cultures. What Beverly Cleary wrote about what Henry had to say is not okay. It's insulting and demeaning to other races. But back in the time the story was written, people didn't see it that way. So the good news is we are certainly more aware and sensitive and respectful today. First Indian and third Indian also said ugh. It really hadn't mattered which Indian said ugh. All three said it at the same time. Then in November, Robert came down with mumps just before book week. At the last minute, Henry had to wear a long cotton beard and read Robert's part, one of the 7 dwarves in a play called Storyland Favorites Come to Life. It wasn't a play that appealed to Henry, but at least he didn't have to memorize any lines or do much practicing because there wasn't time. During the performance, he had to stop reading several times in order to take pieces of his beard out of his mouth. Oh dear. The worst part had been in a parent-teacher program for National Brush Your Teeth Week. Henry had been really disgusted that day. He had to wear his best trousers and white shirt to school, and he had to stay clean all day. Then he missed practicing with his football because the meeting was after school. Worst of all, he had to stand up in front of all the mothers and teachers, bow and recite, "I am Sir Cuspid, my job is to bite. Brush me twice daily to keep me so white." The kids called him Sir Cuspidor for a long time after that. If you're not sure what a cuspidor is, look it up. Yeah, enough said. Now Miss Roop was telling the class that the Christmas operetta was called A Visit to Santa Claus. It was about a mother and father and their 2 children who visited Santa Claus at the North Pole on Christmas Eve. Henry thought it was a dumb play. In the end, it turned out that the little boy had dreamed the whole thing. Henry disliked stories that ended by being someone's dream. Miss Roop said, "Since the whole school is giving the operetta, there won't be parts for everyone in our room." "Oh, that's good," thought Henry. He slid way down in his seat so Miss Roop wouldn't notice him when she assigned parts. Miss Roop continued, "Richard, Arthur, Ralph, and David will be 4 of Santa's reindeer. The other 4 will be chosen from room 5. So far, Henry was safe. He stayed down in his seat just to be sure. "Mary Jane, you're to have the part of the dancing doll. Beatrice, you will be a rag doll." Girls' parts, Henry felt a little safer. "Robert, you will be the big brown dog," Miss Roop went on. All the children laughed. "Rawr, rawr, rawr," said Robert. The children laughed again. When Miss Roop started to hand out the parts, Henry decided she had come to the end of the list. He sat up straight in his seat and looked out the window at the sky. It did look darker. It might be snow before Christmas after all. He was glad he wouldn't have to stay in after school to rehearse A Visit to Santa Claus. He wanted to make snowmen and throw snowballs, since of course his mother and father would not give him the flexible flyer until Christmas. When he had his sled, he wanted to coast on 33rd Street Hill. Miss Roop, holding one part in her hand, stood in front of the class again and smiled in Henry's direction. Uh-oh. Just in case she was smiling at him, Henry quickly slid down in his seat again. "She was smiling at him," she said, "and the best part of all goes to Henry Huggins. Henry, you're to be the shortest boy in room..." Listen to this. Oh dear. "Henry, you're the shortest boy in room 4, so you are to have the part of Timmy, the little boy who dreams the whole story." And the class just shouted with laughter. A little boy! Oh, it was worse than anything Henry had imagined. He could never live down the part of a little boy. Sir Cuspid had been bad enough, but a little boy, the kids would never stop teasing him. "Oh, Miss Roop," he said desperately, "there's lots of little kids in the lower grades. Couldn't one of them have the part?" "Oh, no, Henry, all the 2nd and 3rd grade boys are needed for the chorus of polar bears. And the 1st grade boys are too little to learn so many lines." Oh boy. She handed Henry his part. So many carbons had been typed at one time that the thin paper was almost too blurry to read. But Henry was able to make out Act 1, the scene in Timmy's bedroom. Timmy is wearing pajamas. Enter Timmy's mother. Timmy's mother says, "Hurry up and get into bed, Timmy. This is Christmas Eve, and good little boys should be asleep when Santa comes." Timmy, "Yes, Mother." And Timmy gets into bed. His mother tucks him in and kisses him good night. Timmy's mother says, "Good night, Timmy. Pleasant dreams." And she goes out and shuts the door. Timmy says, Oh boy, am I sleepy. I wonder what Santa Claus will have for me in his pack. I think I will try to stay awake." And that was the end of it. He fell asleep. Henry groaned. It was even worse than he'd expected. Pajamas, goodnight kiss. Did they think he was going to stand up there on the stage in front of all the girls in the school in his pajamas and be kissed by some dumb old 8th grade girl who was supposed to be his mother? Oh, it was too horrible to even think about. He had to find a way out. Already, Robert was whispering across the aisle, "Hey, little boy." Henry ignored him. Maybe if he did stretching exercises for a whole hour every morning, he would grow fast enough to outgrow the part. No, that wouldn't work. There wasn't time. He would have to think of something else. During the rest of the afternoon, Henry had trouble keeping his mind on social studies. He was too busy trying to find a way out of playing Timmy, the little boy. When the last bell rang, he grabbed his beanie and raincoat from the cloakroom. His beanie. Do you know what a beanie is? It's kind of like a baseball cap, but it doesn't have a brim. He was the first one out of room 4 and first out of the school building. Ribs was waiting under the fir tree, out of the rain. "Come on, Ribsy," Henry yelled. "Let's keep ahead of the rest of the kids." But he wasn't quite fast enough. Beezus and Robert and Scooter were right behind him. "Hi there, Timmy," they yelled. "How's the little boy?" And then they began to chant, "Henry is a little boy, Henry is a little boy." Can you just imagine that? I kind of feel bad for Henry. Henry slowed down. "Ah, shut up," he yelled back. "You think you're smart, but you're not. You're just an old rag doll and a brown dog. I'll bet Scooter is something dumb too." "Well, you wouldn't catch me being in any old operetta," said Scooter loftily. "I'm on the stage crew. I get to pull the curtain and turn on the lights and paint the scenery and stuff." Mary Jane came skipping down the street, jumping across the puddles on the sidewalk. "Here comes the old dancing doll," yelled Henry. "Oh, yes," said Mary Jane proudly. "I'll wear my new ballet slippers and my pink taffeta party dress and have my hair curled." The other children were disappointed. They couldn't tease Mary Jane if she wanted to be a dancing doll. It gave Henry an idea. He waited until Scooter said, "I'll bet the little boy will look really cute in his pajamas. Are you going to wear the kind with feet in them, little boy?" And here's his answer. "Aw, you're just jealous because you don't have an important part like I have. I have the most important part of the whole operetta." "Don't be funny," Scooter laughed. "I wouldn't learn all those lines and run around in front of a bunch of people in my pajamas for $1,000,000 trillion. It was a good idea, but it didn't work. Henry would have to think of something else. Maybe he could pretend to be sick. No, that wouldn't do. His mother would make him go to bed, and if it did happen to snow, he'd have to stay in the house while all the other children were out sliding on 33rd Street Hill. By the time Henry reached his house on Klickitat Street, he decided to say nothing about the operetta to his mother and father until he could work things out. He said hello to his mother, who was writing a letter on the typewriter, and then went into the kitchen to fix himself a snack of peanut butter, jam, and pickle relish. Ew! On graham crackers. Oh my. That sounds like quite a combination. He spread a cracker with peanut butter and gave it to Ribsy. Then he leaned back against the refrigerator to munch and think. Tap, tap, tap went the typewriter. Henry fixed himself another cracker. Tap, tap, tap. He heard his mother pull the sheet of paper out of the machine. Then he heard her go into the bedroom. The typewriter. That was it. "Hey, Mom, can I use the typewriter?" "May I use the typewriter?" "May I use the typewriter?" asked Henry patiently. "Yes, Henry, but don't pound too hard." Henry gulped down the graham cracker with peanut butter, jam, and pickle relish. He wiped his fingers on the seat of his jeans and went into the living room. Then he sat down at the desk, took a sheet of paper from the drawer, and put it into the typewriter. He thought a while, and then he began to type. He didn't make the typewriter go tap, tap, tap the way his mother did. He made only one tap at a time, and then after a long pause, while he looked for the right letter, he made another tap. He had to remind himself to push the extra key to make the capital letters. Henry worked for a long time. Fortunately, his mother did not pay attention to his typing. Tap, tap, tap. At last it was finished. Henry pulled the paper out of the typewriter and read, "Dear Miss Roop," with a question mark, "please excuse Henry from the play. He has much work to do at home. Yours truly, Mrs. Huggins." I'm going to hold this up to the screen to see if you can see it. Look at his typing. Can you read that? I don't know. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. He made lots of mistakes. Somehow it didn't look the way he had thought it would. The capitals were not in the right places. He knew much wasn't spelled with a J, or yours with a Z. His fingers had just put themselves on the wrong keys. Henry tore his letter into little pieces and threw it in the fireplace. He ran another piece of paper onto the typewriter and started again. Tap, tap, tap. When the second letter was finished, it read, "Dear Miss Roop, please excuse Henry from the play. He has too much work to do at home. Yours truly, Mrs. Huggins." So, not much better typing the second time. Henry studied it. Those capitals again. He pushed the thing, sometimes he pushed the thing too soon, or not soon enough. And who ever heard of a word like excued or dote? His fingers just didn't hit the right keys. No, the letter was not a finished product. Henry tore this one up too and threw it in the fireplace. He's going to have to think of something else. When rehearsal started after school the next day, Henry still had not thought of a way out. Miss Roop said that today the children would read their parts, but by next week they must have them memorized. "Henry, you and Alice are on stage first," she directed. Alice was the 8th grade girl who was to play the part of Henry's mother. "Come on, Henry, don't waste time." Poor Henry. He slouched up the steps to the stage. He pulled his crumpled part out of his hip pocket and looked at it. He decided to pretend he couldn't read it. Maybe if he read everything wrong, Miss Roop would give someone else the part. Alice read, "Hurry up to get into bed, Timmy. This is Christmas Eve, and good little boys should be asleep when Santa Claus comes." Henry held the paper almost against his nose. He frowned and squinted, and he didn't say, "Yes, Mother." He said, after scowling and twisting the paper around, "Yeah, Ma." "Henry Huggins," Miss Roop interrupted. "You read what is typed on that paper." "Well, gee whiz, Miss Roop, it's so blurry I can hardly see what it says." "Bring your part to me." Henry slouched off the stage and handed it to her. "Now, Henry, it isn't as blurred as all that. However, since you have such a long part, you better trade with me." Well, that's that, thought Henry. None of his ideas seemed to work. "Continue," ordered Miss Roop, and the operetta proceeded. It seemed to Henry that it took a long time to go through it. The music teacher played the music for the songs they were supposed to learn by next week. Henry discovered that in the second act, he was supposed to stand in the center of the stage and sing a song all by himself. It went, "Hooray for Santa, hooray for St. Nick. He comes from the North Pole with a reindeer and sleigh, riding on clouds up high in the sky with a pack full of toys so children can play." It was the dumbest song Henry had ever heard. Hurrah for Santa was just plain stupid. He felt a little better when he learned that Robert had to sing an even dumber song called "Woof, woof, I'm a big brown dog." As Christmas drew near, Henry became more and more discouraged. Everybody in Glenwood School called him Little Boy. His mother and father found out about his part in the play because Mary Jane told her mother and she told Henry's mother. He had to learn his lines and recite them every evening while his father looked at the part and prompted him. He scarcely had time to go out into the garage to peek at the flexible flyer package. Mrs. Huggins went downtown to buy him a pair of new pajamas to wear in the first act. They were made of, oh man, are you ready? Pink and blue and white striped flannel. Henry felt that any pajamas were bad enough, but pink and blue pajamas, he didn't even like to think about them. Henry swallowed hard every morning. He hoped his throat might be a little bit sore, but it never was. Finally, he gave up. There was no way out. All he wanted to do now was to get it over. One afternoon during fifth period, Henry looked out the window and saw a few feathery snowflakes drifting down. They were so light, he wasn't even sure he saw them at first. When Miss Roop wasn't looking, he leaned over closer to the window. Oh, it was snow, all right. It wasn't going to be a green Christmas after all. Now he would get to use his flexible flyer. The rest of the class soon noticed the snow too, and everyone began to whisper. Miss Roop smiled and pretended not to hear. As soon as the bell rang, the children all scrambled up for their wraps and rushed out to see the snow, all except those who had parts in the operetta. They took their wraps from the cloakroom and went to the auditorium. The auditorium was a busy place. In one corner of the room, mothers from the Parent-Teacher Association were altering costumes for the Polar Bear Chorus. Henry remembered those white suits. He'd worn one when he had been the Easter Bunny in the spring program. Now the mothers were ripping off the long ears and fuzzy tails and were sewing on short ears and straight little tails to change the suits into polar bear costumes. The stage crew was at work. Some of the 8th grade boys were turning different colored lights on and off. At the back of the stage, Scooter, standing on a board laid across 2 stepladders, was painting scenery with green paint. Henry sat down to wait for his turn, while Mary Jane and Beezus rehearsed their dance, and Robert, wearing his dog suit, practiced walking on all fours. Henry waited and waited. He sat on the hard auditorium chair and looked out the window at the snowflakes. He could hear the other kids laughing and yelling outside, so he knew there must be enough snow for snowballs. Oh, he wished his turn would come so he could leave. Now the tin soldiers were practicing their steps. At the end of their song and dance, one of the stage crew threw a basketball across the stage in front of them. It was supposed to look like a cannonball, and the tin soldiers were supposed to fall over with one leg in the air. Miss Rube didn't like the way they fell, and she made them do it over several times. Henry wandered up on the stage behind the tin soldiers to watch Scooter paint scenery. "What are you supposed to be painting?" he asked him. "Trees," answered Scooter, "with real paint." "Where did you get it?" "A fellow in my room's father has a paint store, and he gave it to us." Just then Henry heard a bark. It sounded like Ribsy. It was Ribsy. He bounded in through the door of the auditorium, ran up on the steps to the stage, and wormed his way behind the row of tin soldiers to get to Henry. Do you think maybe something's going to happen here? Ribsy's a pretty active dog. Let's see. He shook himself and wagged his tail. "Well, Ribsy, old boy," said Henry, "did you get tired of waiting out in the cold?" Ribsy shook himself again, and Henry patted him. "Why, Ribs, you're all wet. It must be snowing hard." "Well, he's a dumb-looking dog," said Scooter. "Ah, he is not. He's a smart dog, aren't you, Ribsy?" "I'll bet he can't climb a stepladder like my dog can," said Scooter. "I bet he can. Call him and let's see." Scooter looked down at the dog. "Here, Ribsy," he called. "Come on, boy." Ribsy looked at him and then at Henry. "Go on," said Henry, "up the ladder." He pointed to the ladder. Ribsy put one paw on the bottom step. "Atta boy, go on." Ribsy carefully put a paw on the second step. "Good dog," said Henry, urging him on. "Come on, Ribsy," coaxed Scooter. Ribsy cautiously made his way up to the board on the top of the stepladder. "Ah, good old Ribsy," said Henry. "See, I told you he could do it." Pleased with himself, Ribsy looked down at his master, wagged his tail, and said, "Roof!" "You be quiet," ordered Henry in a loud whisper. "If Miss Roop hears you, she'll throw you out." Ribsy sat down on the board and looked around in the auditorium. "Beat it," said Scooter. "Can't you see I have work to do?" "Here, Ribsy," whispered Henry. "You don't want Miss Roop to see you, do you?" Henry liked sitting on the board. "See, I told you he was a dumb dog." Scooter picked up his can of paint and stepped over Ribsy. Then he set the can down and went on painting treetops. "Come on, Ribsy." "Ah, he's too dumb to go down the ladder." "He is not. Here, Ribsy." Ribsy stood up and sniffed at the can of paint. "Here, Ribsy. Come on down," begged Henry, looking up at his dog. "Come on, you old dog. I'll catch it if Miss Roop sees you." Miss Roop clapped her hands for attention. The music ceased, and the tin soldiers stopped falling down. "How did that dog get in here?" she demanded. "I don't know," answered Henry. "I guess he just walked in." "Well, take him out." Henry did not move. "Quickly, Henry, we have a lot to do this afternoon." "Aw, gee whiz, Miss Roop. I'm trying to make him come down, but he won't." "I'll carry him down, Miss Roop," offered Scooter. "I don't think he knows how to go down the ladder." Henry glared at Scooter. "No, he's too heavy to carry down the ladder." "You might fall," said Miss Roop. Just then, Ribsy sat down to scratch behind his left ear. Thump, thump, thump. His hind leg bumped against a can of paint, and the can tipped. Scooter yelled, and Ribsy barked. "Henry, look out!" screamed Miss Roop. The can fell over, and green paint poured down over Henry. "Oh, my goodness." "Good old," said Henry, as he heard Miss Roop run up onto the stage. He heard her, but he couldn't see her. He had to keep his eyes shut. The cold, oily paint was dribbling down his face and neck. He could feel it dripping off his ears. Miss Roop made a squeaky noise. Then Henry could feel her rubbing his head with something made of cloth. "Run and get some paper towels," she called to the other children. She wiped away at his face. "Oh, I knew I shouldn't have let those boys use real paint. They should have used poster paint. It would have washed off. Oh dear, I'm afraid your shirt is ruined." Henry heard Ribsy barking. When he could see again, he found that all the tin soldiers and polar bears and PTA mothers crowded round him. Miss Roop began to scrub his hair with paper towels. "Oh, that's all right," he said to Miss Roop. "It's an old shirt anyway." The towel she was wiping him with fell scratchy on his ears and neck. Ribsy continued to bark and to pace back and forth across the boards as he looked down at his master. "Quiet, Ribsy," ordered Henry. Ribsy stopped barking and looked anxiously at the floor, and then he looked at Henry. Before Henry realized what was happening, Ribsy leaped down from the board, sailed over the heads of several tin soldiers and polar bears, and landed on all fours in the puddle of paint. He skidded and sat down. "Oh, Ribsy," groaned Henry. Then he said to Scooter, "See, he was smart enough to get down by himself." The dog began to bark and run around Henry. He left a circle of green footprints on the floor of the stage. "Oh, Henry," wailed Miss Roop, and then said sharply, "Scooter, take that dog out of the building and carry him. I don't want any green footprints in the halls." "Yes, Miss Roop." Scooter hugging the barking dog. Scooter lugged the barking dog away. Mary Jane squirmed through the crowd to look at Henry. "Oh, Henry Huggins," she exclaimed. "Wait till your mother sees you. Your hair is green and so is your skin." Beezus laughed. "Henry, your face looks like a green apple." "Henry, I'm afraid this isn't going to come off for a long time," said Miss Roop. Someone handed Henry a mirror. Oh, golly, breathed Henry. He stared into the mirror. His hair and eyebrows were pale green. His face was all green at the forehead and streaked with green across his chin. His ears were green all over. Oh, jeepers, green ears! He couldn't take his eyes off the mirror. Secretly, he thought he looked fascinating, like a leprechaun in a fairy tale. Now maybe the kids would stop calling him little boy. I gave him an idea. Miss Roop, I can't be in the operetta when I'm all green, can I? He asked hopefully. Miss Roop sighed. Oh, no, Henry, I guess you can't. She looked at him and then she smiled. I'll give your part to someone else, and you can play the part of the green elf. Now run along home. The green elf? That was a good part. The green elf turned somersaults and didn't have to say anything. Henry put on his raincoat and beanie and went out into the snow. It was deep enough to scrunch under his feet. He scooped up a handful and threw it at Ribsy, who was waiting under the fir tree. The snow would be just right for coasting on the 33rd Street hill when his mother and father surprised him with a flexible flyer at Christmas. In the meantime, he would make a snowman on the front lawn. Maybe he would make a whole snow family, even a snow dog. Good old Ribsy, I don't know how I'll ever get along without you. He took out his handkerchief and wiped green paint from his dog's tail. Then Henry followed a set of big footprints in the snow. He took big steps and carefully put his feet into the marks someone had made in the snow. Jeepers, he exclaimed, I'm going to have a green Christmas and a white Christmas at the same time. Won't Mom be surprised? That is quite a way to get out of being in the play. All right, thank you everybody. I hope you enjoyed tonight's chapter and have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Bye.